Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and well, it seems like our questions and answer episodes are in demand. People like the idea of going through some common problems and sharing with you some of the things I've learned over time and answering frequently asked questions that come into the channel either on a specific video or more general in nature. And I thought I would take the time today to go over some of those things and see if we can't spread the information on a broader basis than just to the person who asked the question or the folks that had viewed the video that day, and hopefully give you a little bit better understanding of fishing reels, their problems, and how to diagnose certain issues and how to correct them. And the first one, that comes in from Gavin, and he said, how do I know when it's time to replace my drag washers? Well, I'm going to go to a general theme here. I'm going to only deal with conventional reels at the time, but we'll talk a little bit about the drag washers and the spinning reels as well as we do this. So the first question, or the first comment I have about it is, well, is your drag slipping? If you're tied all the way down on your drag adjuster, whether it's the star adjuster or the drag tension knob up above, and you can still turn this spool, that means that you don't have enough contact or pressure holding those drag washers firm, and if they're not holding it firm, you're going to have that slip. So that's the first indication that you would have. The second indication is a little bit more interesting. Usually involves when a reel hasn't been serviced in quite some time. And what happens is the greases that were put onto the drag washers, and there's a stack of drag washers, right? There's metals and there's fabric washers that are inside of a drag stack. Well, those will dry to each other and bond. If that grease that was on that drag washer dries, it becomes, well, an adhesive basically, bonds the two, and what that does is it freezes that whole drag stack. So instead of having drags that slip on each other on a cam kind of a basis, what you have is a single stack welded together. Well, you'll have a drag if you tamper it all the way down, or you'll have free spool immediately, but there's no variation in the drag adjustment whatsoever. That tells you that it's time to at least service the drags and probably have to replace those drags if they've bonded to each other in the metals. They've probably become pitted, worn, compressed, all of the issues that would cause that drag situation to occur. So first is all drag and no drag, and then of course if you've tightened your star adjuster or your drag knob down tight, that's also an indication. Well, how do you also know? Here's a pen reel. We got two pen reels here to kind of show you what's going on. After a while of experience, you get to see that there's the drag stack, which we showed you here. There's a spacer, and if you have a good set of drag washers in there, you usually have a gap between the sidewall of your fishing reel and the star adjuster, and that tells you the kind of what's left on the drags. It's almost like a fuel gauge. If you have a reel, another pen reel here, where, well, that's pretty much gone, it's an indication that there's wear. So when you want to take a look on a pen reel particular, if you have this type of a setup, if there's no gap here or there's a limited gap here, that's telling you you need the drag washers as well. So a couple of different indications there: all drag or no drag, drag slip, or the inability to have a drag when it's fully tightened down, are all the indications that you need to replace your drags. Of course, the best thing to do, as I always say, is you should go and have a crack at servicing your fishing reel on a regular basis. I define the regular basis as 1 year, or an annual servicing, either before you begin the season or at the end of the season. I always recommend the end of the season because that way it'll stay serviced over the course of the downtime, and well, it'll be ready to fish when that first run comes again. But when you do your service, check your drag washers, and at that time you'll know whether it needs to be serviced or not. Okay, another one comes in from 061. He says, I have a Mitchell fishing reel with a baffle plate, and in my baffle plate I'm not getting a trip, and it's always rubbing. In this case, I'm turning it to you're kind of hearing a little bit of a hit there, right? He says, I'm always getting a knock no matter how many shims I put up on top. And there's 3 or 4 shims that come from the factory setting on a Mitchell, in this case a 300. Those shims are used to raise and lower this baffle plate, and eventually you will get it where you just fire on the bail release, but you don't have that click. Well, he says no matter what shim setup I use, I still have the issue. Well, that's interesting, that there could be other causes rather than just the shims. This is the most common of the other causes. So if you take your baffle plate off, and this one's kind of all dirty, it's been sitting in a parts pile. We'll get to that question in a minute. But sometimes this trip lever here comes loose. And what happens is the screw that is holding that trip lever in place walks itself back up, and instead of being flat and holding tight to the bottom, it becomes canted. It starts kind of going up this way, and when it comes up that way, that's what's connecting with the baffle plate, and that's what's giving you a click. Now, I didn't take it off in this situation to show you, but this, I guess that the lesson in this one is don't think it's just one thing. Expand beyond your thinking and look for other possible causes. If you've exhausted the number of shims, maybe you've got something like this happening where that screw has come loose, that lever has come up, and that's what's actually doing the contact. Hope you kind of find that one helpful. Third one is kind of a curiosity. It says, where do you learn all of this stuff about fishing reels? Well, I go to the manuals an awful lot, and a question came up when I was saying, do the annual service is recommended. Right? Well, I was just on with another question. Maybe someone out there has the answer to this one. The question that came into the forum was, what does the letter Z on the 700Z series of Penn reels stand for? Well, I went to the Penn manual. I couldn't find the answer. It just always referred to it as Z series, but it never said, why is it the Z? Why was that selected? So I don't know, but if somebody knows the answer to that one, please share it with us. We're always looking for help and understanding. So if you know why the Z designation is on, say, the 716Z, which is a video that I just posted on, well, let us know. So in that manual as well, I found 2 things that are very interesting, and that kind of backs up some of the things I say. I try to tell you to do your service on a regular or an annual basis, flush your reels after use, and keep them lubricated for best results. Well, here's the right out of the Penn Z series manual. It says this Z series is a spinning reel of quality manufactured for durability. It's a precision instrument that requires care to ensure top performance. It says after each fishing trip, the reel should be cleaned. If you have been fishing in salt water, wipe the reel or wash the reel with fresh water, preferably warm, to remove any accumulated salt. Well, right out of the book there. I generally tell you to submerge that in a pail of water. That's the best thing. Don't use dish detergent. Dish detergent will, by its nature, it's a degreaser, so it will get rid of the oils and greases in there. You'll have to go do it. It says, should you wash the reel, be careful not to use driving force of water, since this will force the salt deposits into the reel. Well, we've seen a lot of the reels where we've opened them up and have had salt in there. So just a gentle stream also tells you to use maybe a mister or a spray bottle. So if you have a spray bottle left over from something, fill it with water, and at the end of your trip, just spray it down there. Dry the excess moisture. He said some fishermen want to use that spray oil. I assume they're referring to something like WD-40, and says try not to get any of that on the fishing line. I always get that question, will the oil have a detrimental effect on the line? And in this case, it says it will do no harm to the line if you wipe the excess off. So there you go. And it says some folks like to apply an extra coat of oil to the exposed metal parts after they service the reel after their trip. Go ahead. That's sort of like putting gun oil on. One of the things it tells you about, do not store the reel in a plastic bag. because the reel may develop condensation that could cause rust. Also tells you when you're servicing your fishing reel, in between the services, every now and then check, make sure all of your screws on the reel are tightened, and check the fittings, make sure that everything is bracketed down. We've always talked about boat vibration and how the rattle will loosen screws, so do that. And then it tells you to frequently lubricate all of the friction points. For best results, use Penn's Reels lubricant and oil products. Well, I use those. You see that all the time, and I tell you, I really don't care which one you use. Just make sure that you use a reel oil and a fishing reel grease. Those are designed for marine usage, and while other products may seem like they do a good job, you can use them at your own risk. It's your reel. Do whatever you like with it, but for the most part, the friction points, of course, they tell you to put a drop of oil into the gear shaft. That gear shaft is, well, on the other side of that screw is the hole here. The oil is going to come into that. It's going to keep the stem lubricated as that shaft moves around. They'll also tell you to you can put a drop of oil onto your eccentric lever. You can remove your bearing or use the oil port here to oil that bearing. And that'll keep your reel going in between the key services. So how do you learn about it? Go read the manuals. That's probably the easiest thing to do in terms of getting that right. It says the major points are your handle knob. I missed that one. Your handle knob, the eccentric lever, the bail trip cam, the line roller on a freshwater or spinning reel, the inside drag knob. Use that sparingly. It says inside here, and the spool shaft. That's of course this manual is from the spinning reel, but if you take this off, you can get to the shaft underneath right here. You can put a drop of oil onto the shaft. Okay, hope you found that one useful. Also, I've mentioned before, there is a proper way to put a line onto a reel, and particularly with a spinning reel. If you're using a conventional reel, the best way to put the line onto the reel is just to hold the reel with an arbor in between it. We've all done that with line, right? And just spool it up. Just make sure that as it's coming off the spool, it's going in on the same direction. So if my reel is turning this way, I want the line turned where it's coming out the bottom of the reel, the spool. And that'll ensure that it's going to collect properly and it's not going to bind or twist. The more interesting one is always on the spinning wheels, because you will get knots and you will get tangle ups if you don't do that properly. And this one, well, we've mentioned this one before, it tells you to have a person hold the line spool, so like that. Typically the label of the line will be in the right direction. Hold the back of it and unspool it out the front of the spool. What you need to check for there is that the line orientation in the collection and on the spool are identical. So in this case, the line is rolling in this direction. You want to check to make sure that your spool is going to be releasing the line in that direction. So I hope those questions have been helpful. I get plenty of questions on a regular basis. We'll continue to answer those in these episodes. If you like them, again, please like the video and let me know your thoughts in the comment section. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.